Hi guys, so today's video is going to be a book roast of Six of Crows. If you haven't seen this new series on my channel, it's basically where I ask all of you over on my Instagram stories to roast a popular book or let me know your unpopular opinions, and I try to do a combination of books that I like and books that I don't really like, so that way I'm not just using this as an excuse to hate on stuff I'm not a fan of. This week though, we have Six of Crows, and I do happen to like this book. This is going to be non-spoiler for most of it. If there's any spoilers, I will have a spoiler announcement and then I'll have the spoiler stuff at the end. But I will give you a quick plot summary of it, so that way if you're not too familiar with it, you can still watch and enjoy the roasting. This follows a group of 6 different characters who kind of have to band together to try and take on this impossible heist. All of these characters are quite young. They all have their own difficulties that they are having to deal with. While it is a heist story, I think actually a big focus of the story is them and these problems that they're trying to overcome, more so than the heist itself at times. Some people consider this to be a little bit more on the more mature or the darker end of young adult. There is a little bit of violence. Some of the themes or things that the characters are tackling are a little heavier than maybe you would find in this author's previous works, the Grisha trilogy. But overall, it is extremely popular, very well loved by a lot of people, and also quite hated, apparently, by a lot of you. I haven't actually read them yet. I was just taking screenshots and sending it over to my iPad, and I was like, whoa, there's a lot of these. So this will be the first time I look at it. Oh, this one says it's a pretty good book followed by a trash sequel. I don't know if I agree with that. I'm very curious. I think I'll actually do a little poll and see which one. Do you like Six of Crows better or its sequel, Crooked Kingdom? I want to see how many of you agree with this particular one. But I would say that I actually had to reread this first book because my expectations for it were completely wrong. I thought I was going to get this fast-paced heist story, and instead I was getting kind of sort of flashbacks, and it was sort of a slower pace, and I was like, I thought this was going to be a page turner. And then I went ahead, once I distanced myself from it for a while, I reread it, and I liked it way more when I knew kind of what I was getting. And then because I had a better idea of what I was getting, I then enjoyed the sequel more. I do think that the plot itself is not really that big of a deal. That's kind of how I feel about it. If you go into this story wanting a fantastic heist, there is a heist, and in the second one I think it's more of let's try to out clever the enemy. I think that's kind of a lot of what the second one is, and you're just kind of along for the ride. But it's not something that I feel like you can really guess and anticipate this is what the character's gonna do next. It's more of, I've learned to care about these characters, I will now follow them anywhere. And then if you don't like the characters, you don't want to follow them anywhere at all, so maybe that's what it is. This next one says, I think it is nowhere close to Mistborn and compare to it just to make it popular. I've seen people compare it to Mistborn and I'm always like, it's nothing like Mistborn. There's the concept of a heist, like, oh, they have to pull off the impossible. And that's it. I mean, I feel like the story is so completely different. The scope of it is totally different. I think that you could argue maybe the settings are both more of an intimate city setting rather than a huge world, but I don't know, even that to me I feel like is sort of stretching it. I don't get the comparisons to Mistborn. I think they're very different stories. I enjoy both. Mistborn's my favorite trilogy, so I do like it a little more, but yeah, I don't get why it's compared. And I mean, this person's saying it's just to make it popular. Did the marketing team compare it to Mistborn? I don't remember ever seeing it compared to Mistborn on the cover or anything. I've never seen any blurbs that compare it to Mistborn. I've only ever seen other people compare it to Mistborn, like readers. And I'm with you. I don't agree. I don't know. I don't know why people say it other than that there's a heist. This next one. So if you are willing to elaborate in the comments, feel free to be like, that one's me. It says, I could write a whole novel called This Book is Extremely Problematic. I can guess where some of what you're talking about maybe comes from, but to get into that, it would be spoilery. My guess is that has to do with maybe some of the romantic subplots Am I right there? Okay, I saw a few different comments that say something along the lines of what this next one says, which is that it's a YA book with YA protagonists, and Nej and Kaz are not 16 and 17. Basically, the main characters are all teenagers, and everybody talks about how they don't really seem like teenagers. I'm pretty sure even I said in my review for it that I just kind of aged them up in my head, and I told myself, oh, they're in their 20s. But I actually would love to comment on this particular thing. So, I mentioned in a previous video that Vin, because we were talking about Mistborn earlier, Vin from Mistborn is 16 years old, and I never hear anybody complain that Vin doesn't act like a 16-year-old. However, I do see people constantly say that Kaz and Inej, and just in general the characters in Six of Crows, act too old. And I don't know if it's because we forget that Vin is only 16 in Mistborn. If you guys haven't read Mistborn, I'm very sorry for referencing this character, but it's the same sort of thing. I don't know if it's the marketing, where because this is young adult, it's just we're more aware of it. I don't know if maybe they just talk about their ages more often. I personally have never encountered somebody who is 16 years old or 17 years old and acts like these particular characters do. However, I grew up in a pretty nice area. My dad grew up in absolute poverty, and he definitely was way older as a 16-year-old than I feel like I even am now. The kind of life he had was so difficult that he had to grow up fast. And Kaz is somebody who definitely grew up in a terrible situation, and he's kind of grown up on the streets, and he had to grow up quickly. And Nej is somebody who was sold into prostitution at a young age, so she had to grow up quickly. And I think as a result, these characters, it's like this bizarre combination of they are young and innocent in some ways because they're not as experienced with life, literally. They haven't had as many years. But they've also gone through more than a lot of people who are older than them would have gone through. I actually don't fault the book for these characters acting this way. I think it makes sense. I think that I'm not trying to put anybody down and try to like act like none of you have ever gone through anything difficult, or that I've never gone through anything difficult. Lots of people go through a lot of difficult things. It's just, I mean, if I had to go through what they went through, I don't think I would act like I do. I aged them up as well in my head. I just think that it's not totally unrealistic, and I think we talk about them sometimes as if, oh, no 16-year-old has acted like this ever in the history of life. And I think actually some have. This next one is unpopular, but I don't think it's crazy to feel this way personally. This one says, I think I enjoyed the original Grisha trilogy more. Lots of people constantly are saying Leigh Bardugo, she gets so much better with every book she writes. Grisha was okay. Six of Crows is great. And then people praise Ninth House. And some people hate Ninth House. It's not like it's unanimous or anything. But I think that the Grisha trilogy was what it was on purpose. I think it was intentionally younger in tone because the young adult... This is my thoughts. I'm not saying you're wrong to think differently or anything. I guess I'm just agreeing with this person that... not that I liked Grisha more necessarily, but that I don't always get the Grisha hate, and if you don't like it, that's fine, but people act like it's objectively bad or it's objectively not as good as her other works, and I don't know, I feel like the Grisha trilogy, it's so, in my head, for the younger end of young adult, like maybe 12, 13. Of course, you can have some of these heavier themes and topics explored in younger books, but I guess... I don't know, I'm trying to imagine. I think sometimes people forget how young people are because we remember what it was like to be that age, and so we remember our thoughts, and we think we kind of were maybe not as little as we were, but I think the more I've gotten older and then taught little kids, because I was a private violin teacher, so to teach little kids, you're like, oh wow, that's what I was like when I was 10, that's what I was like when I was 12, and it's like bizarre to realize how young a 10-year-old actually is, or how old a 12-year-old actually is. And not that they're incapable, and not that they aren't able to read more advanced things, but I don't know, I just feel like Grisha is more for the younger end. You can definitely enjoy things that are more for the younger end. I just don't think it's bad. I think it's fine if you like it better. I would say it's more fantasy. It feels more fantasy than Six of Crows, and if that's your thing, I think you get that. It's also a single point of view. If you don't like a large cast, it also fits that. It's more the world will end if we don't succeed kind of a plot. There's a lot about it that's very different from Six of Crows, and I completely get if somebody likes it more. This next one's interesting. It says, it shouldn't be in the Grishaverse, should just be a standalone. I said Grishaverse. I do think that its world building somewhat relies on you kind of already being aware of the world. It doesn't spend that much time introducing you to the world itself. I definitely think that Leigh Bardugo takes a lot of time to make the setting vivid, so the city that they're in, but I don't think that she elaborates all that much on the rest of it. And I will say, going back and rereading the Grisha trilogy, it is kind of cool that you can see she's already kind of had these smaller things introduced in the world, and you see her reference places or cultures of places, and then you actually see it when you're in Six of Crows, which I think is pretty cool. I actually do really like that, so I don't know if I agree, but I don't know. I might want to do a vote for this one too. How many of you feel like this should have just been its own separate thing and not attached to Grisha? So this next one says they didn't really like the romantic subplots and pairings. They wish they'd focus more on the friendship development. And I don't want to like seem like I'm like, you're wrong or anything like that. I don't know if I agree. Not that I think they should have focused more on the friendship. Not saying I disagree with that concept. I actually do think she took some time to develop those things. I think Nina and Inej, some of their interactions are some of my favorites. And I also think that the issues between Jesper and Kaz are really good. That could just be, though, because I feel like, especially the Jesper Kaz thing, that's more explored in the sequel. Also, though, I mean, Kaz doesn't want to be friends with anybody. This next one says, Kaz is just an a-hole. Yeah, he is. Oh, I'm so glad this next person brought this up because I have thoughts on this. It says, now that I'm reading it in audiobook form, I'm kind of disappointed. I don't know. Don't listen to the audiobook. I'm not saying that the voice actors and actresses aren't talented people, but I feel like I just am not a fan. I'm not a fan of how they brought the characters to life. I think they did a good job, but how I hear them in my head is not at all how I hear the narrators voice them. And I actually have a thought about, I want to say something really quick. So personally, I have found I rarely like the way in which young adult books in fantasy are narrated. There's a few exceptions. I think the Ash Princess trilogy, that narrator, she's so good. I like her voice a lot. But most of the time, I feel like we get like Stephen Pacey for the first Law books. He's great. And then Michael Kramer for a lot of the Sanderson books. Amazing, phenomenal. But I think some of the reasons that we feel a certain way about young adult versus adult is often, if we listen to a lot of audiobooks, I feel like they push angst into the voices. And you don't really get that in adults. Does anybody else feel like that? Because I rarely end up liking the audiobooks for young adult books. And it's like, if it's kind of my only option, maybe I have a lot of driving to do, or I'm trying to do a lot of cleaning and I'm like, I don't have time to read, but I want to be able to get to explore the story more, then I will listen to the audiobook. And I just kind of tell myself like, just like try to listen past the voice that they're giving the characters and just, I don't know. I found like with Cinder, I hear so many people say the Lunar Chronicles, they love the narration, and I immediately turned it off. And same with This Savage Song by V.E. Schwab. It was like all whispery and very, really dramatic. And I was like, what the heck? Like I just want it normal. Maybe for this particular person, you just don't like the story though. So maybe that's what it is. But I would encourage you to maybe just try reading it and not listening. This person says, reading felt like she wrote it for the movie screen. She wanted that adaptation. I apologize. That's cute that you apologize. You don't have to, though. I actually, when I read it the first time, I was like, this felt like a movie. And I remember thinking, it felt like a Netflix adaptation. And now we're getting a Netflix adaptation, so, maybe she did. Or maybe that's how she visualizes her stories, and then it comes out kind of cinematic in her storytelling, as opposed to, some books are written in a way that you're like, this is amazing, but I almost don't want anyone to adapt it because I don't know how you could. I don't know how you can make this great. And then there's some books you read that you're like, this would be a great movie or TV show or video game. I'm always advocating for more video game adaptations. This next one says that Nina is way funnier than Jesper. Can I just say, you can go watch my reviews if you want. I'll have a link down below. I do not like Jesper at all. I don't like him. I couldn't stand him at all. And I elaborate. I'm like I can't talk almost because he frustrated me so much. That said, the actor that's going to play him has so much charisma and seems so just, oh my gosh, that guy's personality just seems so bigger than life. And I can't wait to see him play Jasper because I actually think he's gonna make me love Jasper. Jasper. Oh shoot, I'm saying Jasper. I'm sorry. I get frustrated too when I hear people say Jasper and I'm like, it's Jasper, and then I was doing it. This next one says it's overhyped, not that good. People who only read young adult love it because it has more development than most young adult. I read both young adult and adult, and I liked it. This next one says, I didn't finish the first chapter. Why are these books so popular? I mean, maybe keep reading. I don't know what to tell you. I feel that though. I'm not saying that if you've read it all, then you would understand. I'm just saying I don't know if you can figure that out after one chapter or an attempt at one chapter, but I have had that feeling before where I read something and I'm like, seriously, what's going on? Why do people like this? I see a lot of people compare this to Liza Lockamora and talk about how Liza Lockamora is this, but so much better. And oh my gosh, do I completely disagree on that so much. But to each their own. The last couple things I want to talk about are spoilery, so if you don't want to be spoiled, you can stop watching. There were a lot of comments that were referencing the couples in the book, so I do want to kind of elaborate on that. A lot of people were saying they just don't like Inej and Kaz, and they don't feel like they should have ended up together. And did I just interpret the ending different from everyone else? I feel like there's clearly we really care about each other and want to try, but we're not really there yet. That's the vibe I got at the end. I don't know, am I the only one who read that different? So many of these were like, they shouldn't have ended up together. I'm like, they kind of didn't. There's like the potential of maybe someday, but both of us we're kind of scarred and we need to heal before we can really be present within each other's lives in that way. That's how I interpreted their relationships ending, but maybe I interpreted it wrong. Jesper and Wylan, I hate their relationship. Wylan, to me, some people said he was annoying. I get it if you don't really like Wylan. I don't think he was really a favorite of mine, but I liked him well enough. I don't know, he was okay. But I hated Jesper. Wylan's like kind of sweet and nice, and then Jesper is overcompensating so clearly to me, and then I don't know. I just feel like he's one of those people that like walks into a room and it's like, I own this room because I'm so amazing. I have so much personality. Wylan's like so the opposite that I think it was almost like an opposites attract, but to me it was more like just, I don't know, like they don't actually, I feel like, ever develop a good relationship. It's just Jesper's constantly hitting on Wylan and making him blush, and then Wylan randomly will like say something really dirty and then, or like implied, and then Jesper will be like, ooh, I like this from you, and then he's just kind of always making fun of Wylan and teasing him, and then like Wylan gets all, oh no, like, hi, I don't know how I feel about this, even though I'm the one that just said something dirty. And then of course I say Matthias, I think it's technically Matthias, and Nina. You know, I thought it was sad when he died because dude was clearly like so brainwashed, and I know a lot of people are like, one person said they didn't like the relationship because basically he was like, I'll stop being racist because I'm attracted to this person. And I can understand why you feel that way completely. I do think that it was more, for me, that he was a messed up person who grew up, he just had a lot put into that head of his, and it was difficult for him to come away from that. And he was kind of finding that Nina was proof that not everything he was told is really true, and then he grew to care for her through all of that. But I get if you don't really like their relationship, and also, I mean, if you're like, I'm glad he died, I mean, I also kind of get it, because I remember in the first one, I'm like, dude's kind of just like a jerk. And then I feel like he was starting to change, and that's what I thought was kind of sad, is that he was starting to change, and he could have been a great example and leader to other people. Like, I was there where you are, but I'm I'm proof that you can come away from that. And that's why I think the fact that he died by somebody who was basically him, but in the past, was like this full circle thing. I don't know. I actually thought his death was very meaningful and symbolic, but I totally get if you don't really like him or him and Nina. Anyway, that is it for the Six of Crows / Crooked Kingdom book roast. Let me know your thoughts on all of this. Please, 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 if you want to talk spoilers, just make sure you write spoilers and then indent a bunch of times so that nobody who hasn't read the story is spoiled when they just happen to look at the comments. But have a great rest of your day. Thanks so much for participating, and I'll see you guys later.